all the support and coaching and fans and sold out stadiums at Notre Dame to go to, I mean, this was 2012. So
Yeah.
Washington Mystics, we're playing in the Wizard Stadium, huge, arena. There's just like things are whopped up, maybe 2, 3, 4,000 in the stands. It was just so different.
Welcome everybody to the highs and lows of X's and O's. I'm your host, Dr. Hillary Cauthen, or as some of my clients like to call me, Dr. C. I'm a clinical sports psychologist based in Austin, Texas, and I've been in the field for over 17 years working with individual athletes, teams, and organizations in building their mental performance and wellness programs. My passion is to assist breaking down stigmas across communities, which is highlighted in my book, Hello Trauma, Our Invisible Teammate. This is your go-to podcast where we delve into the intricate dance between mental health, performance, and success. Every week, we explore the peaks and valleys while striving for success with the insights straight from top performers and elite athletes. Join us as we uncover their stories, challenges, and mental cheat code that could be a game changer for your performance playbook. Let's get started. Welcome back, our high performers. I'm so excited for this week's guest. I'm going to introduce Natalie Novosel, a full basketball scholarship to the University of Notre Dame. Fun side shot. I reached out because I had, if you listen to our previous guest with Omar, I was like, hey, I got another Notre Dame person, you might want to come on. And so Natalie was gracious to join us. So she was a part of a back-to-back national championship team, a gold medalist with Team USA, the 8th overall selection to the Washington Mystics in the WNBA draft, where she played 7 years of professional basketball stateside and overseas before an injury, which forced retirement. I'm sure we're going to get into it. But currently, she's claiming she's serving in her best role yet as a financial strategist, leading 30 licensed agents nationwide and overseas, creating We Got Next leadership development designed to educate people on the strategies the wealthy use to stay wealthy. I love to start with kind of what we call learning to play. So break down your sport history, what got you into sport, into kind of transition to when you knew basketball was your go-to.
My dad was a four-sport athlete. Late in college, my mom was too young at the time for sports, basically. So, but she does claim, she gave all of us, some athletic ability for sure. And I know she did. But it was just all in the backyard with my family. My brother, and sister both played basketball as well. But we all started with doing multiple sports. So I was doing soccer, basketball, swimming, gymnastics, a lot of different things. But I just noticed that I liked practicing basketball. That makes sense. I would just like to play, and I'd go to practices for stuff when you're young and just doing all sorts of stuff, staying active. But it was really basketball that took me. I just wanted to get better at it outside of practice, outside of games. But I credit my basketball getting better, and honestly, put me on a trajectory to be better than kids my age. Was my sister was so I'm 5'11", but my sister is 6'1", and my hurler 6'5".
Yeah.
And I was the run, my twin brother, and he was, came out. We were both previes, but he just shot up, right?
Yeah.
And I remember just playing in the backyard. My dad would, we'd all play together, and I was just so much shorter. So I would lose game after game after game. And so I was such a sore loser too. So competitive. I just wanted to win so bad that it was the one thing that I got a taste of it a little bit, and I would just go back and practice really, really hard and get crowd back to come back and play. And I'd win one game, lose 12, and then hold on to that one win. And then I just started practicing. So I had to get really good at maneuvering ways to win, with maneuvering against bigger bodies, trying to figure it out underneath the basket, or using, the English on the ball and stuff to get creative. Had to get my outside shot right. So it was just, I think that's really what it is. Whereas they just bullied me, and because I was oh, it's amazing, and you work hard, you do get Mesker right. Yeah, oh man, I practiced that. It's so cool to see it out there, right? And so,
And when we take this fun backyard play, which I think we don't give enough credit to it, but it is when a lot of the learning happens, and it's a lot of creativity. I think we can fail a little bit easier and try more things. We're a little bit more risky to try more things back there, even if failing is harder because you're siblings. But you do get more creative. When did you transition into a more competitive organizational sport? What age sport became more serious?
so I think I started playing around 7, but honestly, it was I think I remember playing maybe in middle schools where I did parochial league in middle school, and I just was light years ahead of everybody. And that was when the freshman coach, she was like, hey, come play the freshman team. And I started to notice, like, I knew I was good, but I wanted to, like, I think what was so special because my high school was like 3rd in the nation, 6th of the nation. And when I was playing there, but we had 7 D1 athletes ahead of me, and I was the youngest. So the same things, the same tune, I wanted to beat all of them, right? And, it's invaluable to have that kind of experience to play against day in and day out. Of course, I lost significantly, right? But it was never like it was never giving up to like, oh, it made me worse because I'd have glimmers of like success.
We've had multiple guests on here, but, like, I think what's standing out is you actually had a already pre-established successful program, like the standard at an earlier age than some of my other previous guests that we talk about. So, talking about what it was like knowing the high school you're going into has such an expectation, the talent that was already there, like, was there pressure involved around it? Was there a tone set for the culture?
There was absolutely already a culture of competitiveness and success. My sister had already won a state championship in her 8th grade year, and so she was 3 years ahead of me, and I was already, still playing in the backyard with them. Um, and they let me play up a lot, so I think it helped structure me a lot, and I'm glad you said that because I remember when I was kinda like the last of the way, there was maybe like one or 2 athletes D1 below me, um, and my coach had the lead my junior year, and we still laugh about it now. He still feels bad that way. But they wanted him to come back and teach. He was like the athletic director, and we had new management, so he still apologizes to me. But it's just so funny because a new coach came in, and it was one of those where it's not like I could have walked all over him, but my other coaches didn't I don't know, I think I was getting that air about me. I was like, "Oh, I'm confident, I got this," and I say it like I stunted my growth, I think, junior and senior year. Still working hard, still playing hard, honestly, but it was still I think I would have had a higher expectations, and those standards were still pretty high.
Sure. And who was kind of the most influential during that really formative development teenage years for you?
Yeah, great question. I love this because I credit a couple of them, but it was really my head coach who ended up leaving, who has this relationship with now. He he did something. He told my mom my freshman year she's the potential to come out of here the best player that's ever come out of here. My mom ended up telling me that. So it was one of those where like it didn't like, oh yeah, I'm the best. It was more of like, oh my god, I gotta prove him right. Right. But what really did it is I think it was my freshman, no, it was my sophomore year. My sophomore year, he said, now I was pretty good at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I wasn't elite, right? Yeah, and I was pretty good. I was above average athlete. I was pretty good at stuff, but he said, "You're not allowed to shoot a 3 for the rest of the season." This is early on, and I obey. I was like, "Okay, well, he knows what he's doing, and so let me try this." And yeah, the whole season I didn't shoot a 3. Um, and it got me so good. My bread and butter was going to college, was I could get to the rim
Mm.
against anything, any defense, any body, like, so I think that was what helped me become elite at that. And then junior year, I was also, start shooting threes again, but I got better at that. And then I had to work on my 3 a lot in college because I was like, "Oh, I can get to the rim anytime I want," right? And then all of a sudden in college, they start backing up. I'm like, "What the heck am I gonna do now?" Right? And so I'm like, "Oh, I can't shoot 3." And so then I worked really, really hard on that and became um, led the 3-point shooting percentage my senior year.
Yeah, because I watched my kid was playing last night. She's middle schooler, right? She's a hooper, diehard. And they're very good right now, so they're winning, and so the coach is really nice, like, "Hey, let's run the plays. Let's do things differently." And I see one girl who's like, "I'm gonna shoot anyway." And it's like, okay, well, she gets pulled out because that's not following the rules. But, it's hard for young kids to not wanna go instinctually, which is to score and to win and to listen to the process. At what point did you ever decide I'm gonna specialize in basketball?
Yeah, it was my freshman year of college. Sorry, my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
I played still club a software through that. Um, and it just got too much, I think, for my family as well.
Mm.
And then they made me choose, and it was kind of easy at that point to choose. Um, but I didn't even go on like an elite level AU team until my junior year.
Yeah, wow.
So I played, yeah, 2 back-to-back years elite level. I could have done it my sophomore year, and my coach again was like, "Hey, I really encourage you not to do this."
And so I mean, we're jumping ahead a bit, but I'm curious because times have shifted now,
Mm.
right? And like recruiting process is different. I think the access and availability to watch players earlier on is different. Like when I think about like Paige, Caitlin, like how much they've been tracked at 12, like 11 or 12, right? And so the balance, like, what is the right thing to do, right? I have a 13-year-old and like we're getting her in the AAU circuit, right? But we're very intentional. It's still developmental. Her coaches get it in the system. Um, but there's this like, well, next year you got to start looking at that social media and what's her brand. And I'm like, she's 13, you know? And so I guess my question is, where do you see the sport going? Because there's more eyes now on women's basketball. Like,
Yeah, so it's a tough because it's like I know it works for mine, but it's like it's a different for us.
right,
Like, but at the same time, it's I still always go back to the fundamentals of like if you're elite and if you're an above average athlete and you are working on your game, like you're gonna get found. You know what I mean? The social media and the brand, yes, there's deals to be kind of things like that, but I think they get so much um focus on trying to get the NIL, the money and stuff like that, instead of actually being really, really good, right? And so a lot of kids nowadays will just like go to the gym just to get a good video to post it rather than going for the gym and getting your work in
right,
and then maybe post a video. And I think a lot of kids get kind of sucked into that, and understandably so. I couldn't imagine having the whole world looking at you potentially,
right,
or you looking at the whole world and all these kids out there. But it's just the people, especially young kids. They're not frontal lobe isn't for them, so they're just like, oh my god, that kid is amazing. When they really just seen a highlight,
right.
and then they're like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. So I can't imagine, but I think, yeah, I just go back to fundamentals. If you're gonna be really good, it's easy. It's almost easier now to set yourself apart because nobody wants to do the dirty work,
Right.
right? And that's what I always say too. Is it's easy to look good on social media, and I always remember too, like even when I was growing up, I wasn't in like I was in like the top 100 wherever, but I wasn't like the top 15 players. I was going into but I remember some of those players playing against them in college, going further than them, right? So it doesn't really matter, and I wish I could help parents understand that it doesn't really matter too much going into it. And now the portal, like if you wanted to move, you could.
Yeah.
I encourage a lot of them to stick it out.
And this is why I love, like, part of doing this is, like, stories that we're sharing the story, and it's relatable, but it's also the experience of saying, like, the research doesn't lie. Like, multi-sport athletes are the ones that are the most highly recruited because we develop so much different of our body, our aspects, our mind, the competitive nature. You can't hide the fundamentals and the technique, and so we have to develop those. Uh, but I kinda love your point, like, the elite will shine, the stars will shine, but even further, those that have good work ethic and drive and dedication are the ones that have longevity. And I think that's the part if we could give tips and advice is like, hey, like stay true to the course of like the values of hard work and discipline and learning the game. And then the next level will show up. So let's talk about like you knew you wanted to go play basketball at an elite level. You work hard to get there. Was Notre Dame the place that you knew from the jump, or did you have a hard decision?
Yeah, I grew up in Kentucky, and I always kept Kentucky. Kentucky's a pretty good program. Louisville is a really good program. Hattie kept them, but I was one of those kids that just needs to get out. I need to get out, and so it really came down to I knew two things going in. I wanted to play and right away, and I wanted to uh, like really that was like baseline level. But the two things I really wanted to get out of it was one, I wanted to help the program become elite. Like I didn't want to go to a UConn where I was like, "Ah, I'd have to sit a year." You know what I mean? I wasn't that type of player where I'd have to come in straight away star. Um, and the second was win national championship. That's what I wanted to win. And so those two things, and I recognized when I went to Notre Dame, like they had some solid success. They were a solid program like that. They won a championship before, been in the Final Four. Coach had been there for forever, a lot of longevity. The best legacy was to lead Notre Dame um, in really great hands, back-to-back national championships. We definitely helped them become elite, and now they're
Yeah.
top five.
Right. And if you have not been on that campus, like, you definitely need to step on it because it is, first I went the first time ever in June this year, and
Okay.
I mean, it's breathtaking. You know when you get there, like, how beautiful it is. So I love it. You knew it there, you go in. Now was the transition everything you expected it to be?
I was so new my freshman year, I was just playing, I think. Uh, and then I went home. So my whole playbook for me was it would have worked. As I work really, really hard, if I outwork everybody, it's not I'm gonna get my way, I'm just gonna get at my next set of my expectation, right? So, I had a pretty good freshman year. We had, like, the freshman team, wasn't, like, spectacular or anything, um, but it was solid, and then my second year, I was like, "Oh, no, I'm coming in, want to start, going in." And so I did all the work, worked super hard, came in, and then, we had a highly touted, freshman coming in, Skylar Diggins. So, obviously a phenomenal player, and I remember even though I'd done all the work, for some reason I felt like when I got in a starting position, those first 3 games, my mind started, like, playing tricks with me, and I just started making mistakes, and I just felt like I was walking on eggshells in there, and then boom, horn, like, Skylar would come in, right? And so and I really it took me I never recovered that season, like, I genuinely my production dropped, I still played, but, like, intermittently, I was never, like, the played unconscious type of player, and I really struggled, and that was, like, the hardest year I've ever had to deal with because my whole world was basketball, to be honest, like, yes, to go to Notre Dame, and it was a hard program right now, like, hard, school for sure, but I was going there for basketball, so that was my whole life, and a whole paradigm is if I work hard, I get to do it on my own. I was like, "Oh my god, is it like I'm not good enough?" Right? Instead of like, "Okay, so where do you fit in?" It wasn't no problem solving. I was like, "Oh, we're hooked," right? And that's really showed with confidence that whole season. It was painful to the point where I remember thinking after we lost in the Sweet 16 that year, like I felt relief. It's embarrassing to think that because all I wanted is national championship. I remember feeling relief because of how it was painful that year, right? Oh, yeah, I'm dealing with your head, dealing in your head the whole time. So
And did you let anyone know that you were struggling at that point?
no, and I think and of course people knew. You know what I mean? My coach, I supported her. Like she'd have our like 5 minutes with coach every week. Try and put your 5 minutes with coach. Coach's office right here gives them the practice. The locker room gets the practice facility. I would walk like all the way around the state
Yeah.
to get to the locker room and to avoid that. Um, and it was just I never. That's one thing that I'm glad you touched on that because I regret it so much because there's so much help. In telling kids now like there's so much help there. My family knew I was struggling. My best friends knew I was struggling, but see, I like to say I hid it well, but I just was trying to hide it, right? But I remember just times of practice where I'd get yelled at or I'd make a mistake and I curse, I love to curse in practice, finally just like let out a curse word and then like, on the line. And that's where like running and just like tears just streaming down my face, like not wanting them to like see it, but I just couldn't contain it
Right.
anymore. Yeah, it was pretty sad. It was tough. And I remember like one time telling coach, a sports like came to talk to one of my classes for some reason. I remember being like, "Oh my god!" Like I came after him. I was like, "What does like depression feel like?" Right? Oh yeah. Like, I don't know. He like gave me his number and I never called him. But I told coach that day. I somehow just talked to her and I was like, I figured it out. Like, I think I'm just depressed. Oh wow. That was my fix. So like I'd self-diagnose myself without ever having any help. But it was still like later in the season. I just, still I think I had my best day after that. Imagine that, letting some right in. But yeah.
Well, and I think it was like you had clarity to like what you were feeling, right? Because from the sounds of it, this is the first time you're getting what you want, but you have pressure of something coming behind you. And now it's like, what if I'm not enough? And we all have a not enough button. And yours wasn't even hit because you were the starter, right? But we had this unconscious fear of like, if I get what I want now, and I think people don't realize that when we get success, sometimes it's harder to maintain success versus chasing for it. And so now you triggered this not enough button and that's the first time ever, and so you're alone without your family in this space, that's your life, and so then you had an answer of like, "Oh, this must be it," so it probably give you a lot of clarity. Felt like, "Okay, I'm not totally crazy, like, I got a reason why I feel this way." So what did you do with it? Season ends, you guys go to Sweet 16 and you're done. Like, did you reset? Did you do anything, or was it just like, it just fixed itself?
Yeah, no, it did not. But what I did was I had a choice to make because I was like, okay, do I transfer? That was my first choice. That was my first thought. Do I transfer? But I had too much pride. I mean, imagine a whole year of me suffering didn't even ask one person for help, right? So of course I had Cuba. Of course there's a growing issue. But I'm so glad I had that stubbornness. You know, I'm gonna like figure this out.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm so grateful I stayed as mature after in my career. But I went home and I'm telling you, I thought I worked hard before, but I was like a mad bull. And I like worked out and I like got my body into the best shape possible so that I could get better skill wise. So my body was like the best shape. I wasn't overweight by any means, but I just remember getting more lean and just chiseled and just fast and just fit, right? Um, and then I went into that year, like, I don't even know, like, I'm just so focused and determined, and little nothing was gonna deny me. We had 2 All-Americans coming in. One was my position, one was a little bit, like, forward, but and I was like, it just, like, didn't even matter. And I came in, yeah, I was here in my starting position, and yeah, that was and 5 people did graduate too, like, as well. And I mean, I ended up being most improved that year in the whole conference, leading the league or leading the league in scoring or something leading my team in the first, like, scorer, first team Big East, right?
Did your mindset shift from instead of it being this internal focus of I'm gonna be a starter to the mission of a national championship?
Yeah, I love that question because and this is what I think turned the whole program, honestly, was we were, like, above average, you know what I mean? And the learning program was. We'd always been there, but it's just like we weren't top 5 over here, right? And so it was really cool because there were about 4 or 5 other because remember those 5 people graduated. There were 4 or 5 other players on the team who were all hungry. And Skylar, you know, had, Deborah Peters, as well, like Brittany Mallory, all of them, Meg Ruszewski, like our starting 5. And then the 2 coming in, All-Americans, they were hungry, ready to come in, fresh and pretty green, you know, but ready to go. And it was just like the perfect storm. It was just like everybody took care of ourselves so then we could just be on the court,
Mm,
whatever the mission was, play your role.
yeah.
Everybody got better. I don't know. It was like you could just tell something was different that year. And it was special. And obviously we rode all the way into the national championship. And I think that was really when the tide turned a little bit with our practices. Like, I thought we were competitive before, but man, we killed each other every day in practice. Nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to yeah, get off the court until they yeah, it was really beautiful. And I think that's that kind of culture and running and gutted and um holding each other accountable. You had the moral authority to hold another person accountable because you were doing work too.
So, best game, I mean, maybe it's the national championship, right? But, like, what's the best high from your Notre Dame experience?
Yeah. I would say the junior year, so right uh, I like to say it's the Elite 8 game and then the Final 4 game. So the Elite 8 game, we played Tennessee, and they were pretty good. We played them at home.
Mm.
And the coolest part about it, and why I like this game, I think, the most, is because the amount of preparation we put into that game. Neil Ivy, who's now the coach, was the scout for that game. And she had us, when I say like, they would come down and they'd have a play call. We'd be like, oh yeah, watch the back door, watch the back door. That was just like the coolest experience ever. And then to finally beat UConn in the semifinal.
Right.
I mean, when I tell you, yeah, I mean, everybody was took UConn, so it's their losses, but man, we did get our losses, man. And we finally beat them, and that was when like Maya Moore was there that year. Man, she, you know, lit us up for 4 years, 3 years, I guess, for me. But it was still pretty cool to finally like beat them once and for all, and not only on the biggest stage.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, when did you know you were gonna even go to the next level professionally?
What's crazy is because I mean my first WNBA game that I played in was the first one I ever watched.
Huh.
Isn't that wild? I grew up in Kentucky, no professional sports.
Yeah.
Never had. I didn't know anybody around me proximity wise who'd gone and played one in the league, but then two like made a career out of it. Honestly, so it didn't really occur to me. But it was a mock draft or something, and my name was like in the top 10, and I was like, what the
Oh, you're like, "I'm not good?"
yeah, and I think I remember, like, it's like my mindset, Coach McGraw, even, like, that junior year, she was the things are coming out today, like the awards at the end of the year. I was, oh wow, cool. Or she's like, you're my first team. I was like, I remember looking at her like, first team? Were you joking me? Because I think I just wasn't caught up to my identity yet of like Maya Moore's first team. Right? So yeah, and she said, Natalie, you're leading the team who's number one in the league right now, right? It was just kind of interesting because I didn't think of that as that. And so I never thought like, oh, when I get to the league, get to the league, that's crazy, right? So yeah, it was just probably that senior year, and I make the decision to take out a drop pre-med at the time because it was my last senior semester. And I had like 4 science electives, 2 like fundamentals. And I was like, I'm trying to gym trip. You trying to go to the league here? I'll be like, let's just, drop that major and finish the other one I was doing.
And then we get there, right? Picked 8th overall.
Yeah. Went to the last place team. Washington Mystics, they had won like 6 games the year before. We ended up winning 5 games that year. It was really crazy to go from all the support and coaching and fans and sold out stadiums at Notre Dame to go to, I mean, this was 2012. So yeah, Washington Mystics, we're playing in the Wizard Stadium, huge, arena. And it was just like things are walked up, maybe 2, 3, 4,000 in the stands. It was just so different. And we were losing game after game after game. Like we won 5 games that year. And so it was a strange season. I didn't have a great experience. But I really struggled.
But you stayed playing for 6 more years professionally. Like, how did you get your groove back? Like, what helped you figure it back out?
Yeah, great question. I think it was for me, I ended up then after that I went to Romania and I was playing EuroLeague, but we probably should have been in Euro Cup, which is like best league in Europe is EuroLeague and then Euro Cup. And then we were newly EuroLeague, but we really should have been, and man, did we get hounded. I didn't want it. I were losing. It just is a tough barrier as well, language. And I remember telling my agent, anywhere but Europe next year. And so they got me to Australia and I came home, worked super hard again, got back to my playbook and stuff. It's not working. And then I ended up going to Australia. And then man, I love it. I loved it. It was just felt like it was right where I should be playing and essentially, right? And so I had a great time there and never left.
So let's talk about, the season ending, career ending time, because we never get to write our ending story the way we want it to, right? And I think at that point, was that a year that you had in your mind decided, oh, I'll probably be done this year anyway? Or was this injury like shocking and took it away from you?
First one, I was like, okay. I remember my dad, I called him, told him, he's like, okay, well, what job are you gonna get? It's not like job. Get that job about this high job. So I remember, I think I was 24 at the time, Australia. Came home, worked really hard, got it back, went back to playing. Still great, right? And then the second one is when I was like 28, I think, like 27, top of my career, prime, playing, just won a championship. Sought after my income, like went back up to where it was before my first ACL. And so yeah, it was that one I think hurt the most because I was so just right there, right? To be honest, I thought I would play till I was 40 or till I couldn't walk, and I never thought it was the last. So what did it though was I still didn't in my career uninjured, and I went home. So I ended up having my surgery in Australia. And it wasn't that I didn't want to get it done there, but I was like, I heard there's basically 90% of it is rehab. So, okay, no problem. Those 4, I can rehab, worked hard, came home. I even took the next season off. So I really had 18 months. 18 months. And it was one of my same coaches who's a different program. And so he was like, yeah, absolutely want to have you back. Signed a 2-year contract. So I was going to get my permanent residency. When you're a permanent resident, you can have more Americans overseas. So I got my permanent residency, signed a 2-year contract. A month before I was supposed to go, I reached for it.
When do you think you accepted like this transition, right? Because the retirement part that people don't get either. One, yours was forced, not when you wanted. And then the routine shift, the everyday, the expectations of someone controlling the schedule and what to do. And like, that's all gone. So when did you transition in and then figure out, like, I got life set, like, I'm good?
I think it was tough because the schedule, right?
Yep.
Um, in Australia, you get everything done. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, and you go to places and they tell you what to do,
Yep.
right? You whether it be your workouts in the gym, whether it be your like, in the like an actual basketball shooting workouts, or you go to the gym and get your workouts in. And so I remember going to the gym, and I was like, maybe like a few weeks in, like, every day I gotta figure out what to let this stay. So I remember going back to some of my I'm grateful, like, some of my former, gym guys, and they give me the workout and stuff, but, I ended up having a moment, like you say, like, when did you finally accept it? I think I remember, it was, like, maybe during COVID when I told you I gained weight a little bit, and my knee was still just not what it was supposed to. Um, and so I remember just, like, looking in the mirror one day, and I just, like, this amount of grace just, like, washed over me. And I think we can all do is just have more grace with our bodies, and I had to sit there and be like, "Wow, you really, like, have done a lot for me." Sees, like, maybe instead of excuse me, like, hating what I see so much, it was just like, maybe, like, you should have some self-care with what you're putting into your body, how you are listening to your body. Because I would go always 0 to 100. I'd go in the gym and just, like, go, right? Just, like, on the Tabata bike and just go, 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 like, oh, I'm no, like, no self-care. How's my body feel? Like, it was never that.
That transitions nicely into kind of the mental play that I like to work through and, like, this relationship, like, we've tapped into and danced around a little bit of, yes, I knew my mind wasn't so great for me when I was in college and had a lot of confident stuff. You had access to a sports site for a lecture, didn't seek out the resource even though you had a number. Um, but I am curious, right? Like, the times were different for how we talk about mental health, how we talk about mental performance, the resources. Um, what do you think is shifting, or when do you think you really would have needed it the most if you had access? If someone was like, "Here's a person," like, when would you have used it?
I would have absolutely used it. I would have used it freshman year even, but really sophomore year, I needed to work through that instead of suppressing it because everything that happened, it was immediate. Oh, of course that happened to you. Like, of course you did that. You're this. I mean, it was disgusting. The self talk, right?
Right.
Um, just to have someone help you work through it. And it's so funny. My mom even sent me this whole. I'll never forget it, this brown envelope. Um, it was like full of stuff she printed out from just all about your mind and all this stuff. And I remember reading it like I was like, I do not need that. I kind of, like, screw this. Oh, it's in that about this. I didn't even. Oh, I read it 5 years later, and I'm like, wow, mom, you really something, right? So, yeah, I really could have used it then and just got someone to talk to. And like, I really didn't even start to understand how much your mind matters until, like, I just, like, followed my way through it. Um, go like that sophomore year, and then also even going into the league. It was that I really could have used it then, like this imposter syndrome I was feeling. Even though I was drafted eighth, I had come from a program. I am a great 3-point shooter, like all of that. I didn't feel like I belonged. Um, and then when I tore my second ACL, for me that was rock bottom. Actually, I mean that one. I mean, sophomore year was really hard, but rock bottom for me was that one. I'm just got like really tough relationship. Really lost myself in that too. And I was gonna go back to a business that I really didn't think I wanted to do, right? So it felt to me I was like physically broken, right? Like heartbroken and also gonna go broke because another 18 months. So yeah, that was really the toughest part. And I remember moments of because I couldn't travel right away after the surgery, but wait like 2 months and everybody else had kind of dispersed after that. So I really had 2 months to kind of work on rehab and then also just be with my own thoughts. And I remember being just I couldn't, like, stop thinking, like, overthinking. It just was, like, painfully. I'm very Annie, right? And I don't even know what made me do this, but I just started YouTubing, and it was basically, like, how to fix your brain. Something's not right because I don't feel very good. And I don't know what it was those 2 months. I was just, like, listening and learning, started journaling, writing stuff down, just getting it out. up inside my head. And honestly, from then, I think that like, man, I really could have used a lot of help because I remember somebody kept saying to me, um, he was just like, how much do you think mentally is the game, right? Like as you go up, and I'd be like, people say 90%, whatever, and they're like, well, do you spend the 90% of your time or your mind? And I was just like, like that is crazy. Um, and to that point, I was using I don't know 5%, 10%, maybe. I just got kind of lucky when I was doing some of those things at like sophomore year or something, right? Um, so yeah, that's what I would say.
So how do you think we shift this, especially as the women games get bigger and we have more eyes on it, more expectations, and it is shifting, right? How do we get the resources and access needed for the holistic interdisciplinary care for them?
I think it helps that you hear one to have the resources, two to encourage people to go to them. Like we genuinely had resources available. Even when I was in Australia, we had a sports psych that year, and that was actually as a was actually cool. Um, and almost like it's like a combination of for me, I read a book about something, and I was just like, "Hot dang, like why didn't this is good?" Like imagine. And so just having someone, I think bringing value or just even having like maybe a less formal setting of like, hey, just come in and have this person talk to them. And then maybe reach out if you wanted to have set up an individual session, right? Some of that stuff you said resonated with me. I'm dealing with some of this stuff. You don't even have to be dealing with stuff. It's having a conversation. You don't have to get rock bottom before you change or like before you ask for help. That makes sense, right? So that was a big shift. I was just like, wow, you can really be working on your brain stuff every single day. And that's one thing I've learned the most is, you have to, like, for me, somebody called it like confidence come. You have to decide to go, versus
Right.
it's just like, it is a daily struggle, right? And you do have to choose to put the things in your brain that will help you thrive and not just sit in your sometimes you do gotta sit in your stuff, yeah, but at the same time, you can't stay there, right? But allowing yourself to, like, okay, feel some of the stuff you're feeling, and then talk to someone or journal about it, getting it out and sifting through that so that you can just get rid of it and keep moving rather than most people just stay there.
Yep. And I love that because, 1, I set you up for this, which was great. 1, there are resources that have always been available, and, I think the point is, like, use what fits for you,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, you were YouTubing, you're reading books, there's podcasts. Yes, do I advocate for, like, one-on-one work? Yeah, that's my job, but I'm also like, do what works for you when you're ready because it does take you weren't ready at certain periods to actually engage in it. And the other part I think is so beautiful that I want everyone to listen to is you don't just have to work with someone when it's struggling and when it's hard. Like, our best athletes, our shooters don't just shoot for a shooting specialist when it's bad. They're shooting every day. They're working on the craft every day. And so I think there's beauty in the mental aspect of, yes, sometimes it's harder and we need a little bit of technique change to fix it. But when it's going well, we want to keep learning how to make it go well. Right? Like to your point of the confidence mountain, I love it. But I always say, like, you don't wake up happy. You have to work on being happy. It's an emotional state that we all experience. And so I think figuring out these choices, I like to call them like our cheat codes, right? Um, what is a mental cheat code that either you're using it now and it's making life be way more successful, or if you had this cheat code, it would have been a game changer for you? Like, what would you give advice for your cheat code?
Every time I, like, thought of something negative and or it was some sort of negative self-talk, I switched it to being like, I still remember the chants. It was just like a little mantra for you. But for me, it was like, you've done the work, you're starting fletch. You've done the work, you're starting to fletch. And it was like the whole summer. And I remember just like I remember days actually like chuckling to myself because it was pain. It was like actually working, right? So I wasn't thinking about that stuff anymore. It even worked for me like in a relationship. I told a really bad relationship. Every time I like had that thought, it was just like, oh God, and so I instead of that, like, turning it upon I remember having, like, I'm amazing, I'm gonna have an extraordinary relationship, and then ever since after I was single for 5 years, I'm in an extraordinary relationship right now, right? So it really just is making sure some of that stuff that the thoughts are gonna come no matter what. You can't stop the thoughts, right, ever. The machine just never stops. But you can make sure that there is a barrier there to protect yourself from that thoughts, because the thoughts aren't really you. It's just like there, you know? And so what's really you is like what you're actually talking to yourself, what you're telling yourself, what you allow in your subconscious.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, I think there's so many people that are going to connect to your story and the struggles you worked through and the success and the experience. And so this was just like a delight. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for joining us this week on the highs and lows of X's and O's. I hope today's episode has equipped you with another mental cheat code to help you navigate your own highs and lows in pursuit of your success. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'd love to hear what you'd like to hear next. Until next time, stay curious, compassionate, and courageous.